Gru. Enjoy your time on the train. I thought I would respond to your text. It was you asked why Wrexham? Why would let's face it, it's Rob McElhenney who's sort of doing the research and actually spearheading this thing. So why for him Wrexham versus some other football club? And I actually have a list of things. If you have, I've watched a bunch of interviews with him. He was on Stephen Colbert's late night talk show last night. He and Ryan Reynolds were, and they asked him, how did he figure it out? And he said, I Googled how do you buy a sports franchise, and he basically managed to find some guy who brokers those deals and talks to him about it. And the guy agreed to work with him. And when he was looking for a team, so these are the criteria that I have come up with that I think explain why Wrexham fit the bill. So first of all, it had to be cheap, so it had to be in the lower divisions. So they wanted a team that was going to be relatively inexpensive. So obviously that means lower divisions, and as you said, other places in Europe. There were other ones that might meet those criteria. Second thing, he never talks about this, but I'm absolutely certain that the stadium ownership was a huge factor. The fact that they own a stadium that is large enough to meet the criteria of many of the or moving up divisions. So they're not going to have to invest a lot of money in the stadium to move up, say, 2 or 3 or 4, even up to like the level just below Premier League. I think their stadium is still big enough to meet the criteria, because there are criteria to move up. So I'm pretty sure that had something to do with it. I think the last thing was from the very beginning, I'm pretty certain that part of his funding of this endeavor was going to involve making this documentary. And so I think they were looking for a club that met criteria that would make it feasible to do this documentary. And so what I wrote down here is like, English speaking, there's obviously a premium for English speaking, because if you're in an English speaking country, the documentary is that much easier, that much more accessible. I think the fact that people in America are more familiar with the Premier League and some of the players that have been there than other leagues. So I suspect that's also something that makes it more accessible. I think, he talks a lot about it being a working class community, and I think he really wanted to tell that story. So, you probably could get that with any small local football club. So, that might not be a big deal. But Wrexham the town of Wrexham is kind of a great setting for this story. Because of that, it's a working class community. And actually the final thing is that the fact that it's community owned, it's not, and I think the reason why being community owned is important is twofold. First of all, it's community owned, therefore you've got lots of local investment. You've got people who have shown not only are they willing to come to the games, you've got a whole culture of people coming out and making things work and basically running the entire club without outside support. And I think that level of investment, both it makes it easier to make the transition, because I mean, like you saw, I mean, he's hired a lot of those people and actually now paying them to do some of the volunteer jobs they were doing previously. But in addition, you've got storylines there for the documentary, right? So the fact that it's community owned means you've got these people. You've got the pub owner, you've got the people who have worked and volunteered to work with the club, and you're going to be able to tell their story in this hopefully multi-season documentary drama. And so I suspect that that's why Wrexham met those criteria. I mean, it's actually remarkable. Wrexham's story is not completely unique, but that set of criteria, finding a club that had been in the upper divisions and had had a lot of success and has this long history and has a facility that is going to support moving back up into those upper echelons. In addition, actually, I got to say that the Welsh identity, I'm sure, was a huge draw, because there's the Welsh identity with the club gives it a sort of a unique flavor that goes beyond just a local football club. Anyway, my guess is that those series of things made Wrexham sort of a best fit when he decided, hey, I'd like to maybe do this. I think it makes a lot of sense. And honestly, I'm sure that being a business guy, I mean, he talks about how he likes to make money in some of his interviews. And he really is, seems to have always been a guy who was, on the make as a business guy. And I'm sure that when he started talking about, buying a football club and being excited about it, he needed a plan to make it financially viable and sustainable, which he says in the video. And that includes this documentary is the keystone to that entire plan. This wouldn't work without making this documentary, where you're going to get tons and tons of publicity, essentially free publicity for the club, because FX is paying for the documentary. And then I'm assuming they're folding the profits from the documentary back into the club. And if they do that, then I think that's what makes it sustainable for them to grow. And so these storylines obviously were super important. Once again, but I think it's why Wrexham. Anyway, I find it super fascinating. One of the reasons I find it fascinating is that I've thought about this, the idea of, I love this idea of promotion and relegation. For the past 20 years, I've thought about somebody doing something like this. So pretty interesting. Anyway, that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Enjoy the train. Look forward to more short videos.